Hey friends, happy Friday, and it is day 5 of Relationship Rockstar 2020. So hopefully you've been watching videos every day, either live or coming back to catch those later and following along in the exercises in the workbook. Totally free to download at relationshiprockstar.com. That's what the title looks like. Exercises in there, worksheets, PDFs, whatever you need. So, here we are, day 5. And today we're going to talk about how, things happen to us and they trigger us. They make us feel sad. They make us feel angry. They make us feel worried. And that's not a problem. It's actually what we do next that creates a problem for us. So we're going to dig into that today. I'm going to teach you how to very quickly move yourself out of those negative responses. But first, I'm Stacy Rocklein. I'm a relationship literacy coach, and I'm your coach for Relationship Rockstar 2020. This is a 7-day challenge, completely free. We're on day 5. There are already 4 trainings on this page recorded that you can catch anytime, about 20 minutes each, and we'll be going through Sunday. Each day there's like a little fun kind of exercise or activity to do to reinforce what we're learning and to do what I think is the most important part of the learning process, which is take what you're learning and apply it to your own life, or else whatever. It just stays out here. It doesn't become anything that's really important to you. So make sure you get your workbook at relationshiprockstar.com. so you can follow along. I don't know how long this is going to be available for free, so make sure that you do that you invite anybody who might be interested in getting this while it's free. If there's a particular topic that you listen to and you think of another person, reach out to them and share that with them. You could be the person that changes the trajectory of their relationships this year. So just think about that as we go on. Anything else? I think that's about it. Let's get started. I'm going to just hop over and make sure I can see comments in front of me here. And just want to thank you for being here live. I appreciate your energy as I'm teaching. And for those of you who watch and replay, thank you very much for just elevating the love energy of our entire world by focusing in on relationships. So, what happens? It's just totally normal, okay? We get triggered. Something happens outside of us and we have an emotional experience, right? We have a feeling that goes with that. And that's not the problem. It's just that we tend to do some interesting things with that, and that is what is stoppable and what is shiftable. And so let's dive into that today. We're going to talk about auto responses, and I will give some more information about what that means exactly. But when you have auto responses employed in your life and in your relationships, you are basically taking control back, and you are the person who is holding the responsibility for how you feel. And that's empowering. It's really important to recognize that we get to control how we feel. So we're going to pick out some auto responses for doing that today. So, number 1, a reminder from an earlier lesson this week: what you focus on will determine how you feel. Okay, what you focus on will determine how you feel. So here's what happens. We have an experience and we have an automatic emotional reaction. That just happens. Like, you can't really control that. That arises and it comes from your beliefs about yourself, about people, about the world, and we can dig all into that, and I highly recommend doing it, digging into that deep work of what those beliefs are. But in the moment, you don't have a lot of options. You have a feeling. You have a feeling reaction to what happens, okay? That's completely normal. That's a real emotion. But then what we do is we create emotions. I like to say we manufacture emotions, because at some point that emotion will naturally arise, you'll feel it, and it will subside. But what we do, and this is a totally normal human, experience, is that we start to tell ourselves a story about what is happening. And the story that we're telling becomes a manufacturing of emotions. We take what happens to us and then we decide it means something, And whatever we tell ourselves it means is how we start to feel. And so something that would have just had an emotional reaction that would have just we'd moved on from, we create something else by what we're telling ourselves about it. So let's just say you have an argument with somebody that you love. You get into a fight or a disagreement or something like that, okay? You might feel unheard, right? You might feel unheard and have a reaction to that. And whatever that feeling is going to be for you. That's no problem. You know, that's just two humans coming together and figuring out how to get along with each other. But here's what we do sometimes. We start to tell ourselves a story about it, okay? We start to say, he never listens to me. He never listens to me. So what are we going to get, right? We're going to get the emotional experience that goes with that. He never listens to me. You're going to start to feel a certain way about the person. You're going to start to feel a certain way about the situation. And you're creating that emotion by what you're telling yourself. Now, let's say instead you told yourself something else like, wow, this is a great chance to practice. Okay? Here is somebody who feels like they're not listening to me. Here's a great chance to practice my communication, practice trying to be understanding, whatever it is. You're shifting your energy, you're shifting your emotions into something more positive just by what you're telling yourself. Instead of saying, he never listens to me, this is pointless, right? You start to say, hey, here's a chance to practice. Practice a skill, practice being a communicator. It's all about what you tell yourself. So what we focus on is creating our feelings. And when we get past that kind of natural emotion and we start to manufacture, we have to ask ourselves, what is it that we want to manufacture, right? What do we want to feel? As always, I'm looking at notes over here, making sure I don't miss anything that I wanted to mention, okay? So we have to watch for that turning point of where our real emotions turn into a manufactured emotion. So words are very powerful. They're very, very powerful. They create things in our lives. They create our emotions. They create our experiences. And so if they're so powerful, why wouldn't we want them to work for us instead of against us? What can happen in relationships is we get into a rut where we start to have certain tracks that run in our minds about another person, right? Like the he never listens track, right? Or whatever, this sucks track, or whatever it is. We start to tell ourselves things, you know, like for example, for me, you know, when I start to feel like the people around me aren't appreciating me in my household or aren't helping out, I'll go right into a track of like, I have to do everything around here. No one ever helps out. And like all that track, if I don't keep it in check, if I don't pay attention to it, it will start up and I won't even know it. It's already going to be running for like several minutes, if not longer, before I even recognize that I have this track running. And when we let these tracks run and run and run, they start to affect how we feel about the people in our lives. They start to affect the identity we assign that person. That person's selfish, that person's cruel, that person's mean, that person never listens, that person doesn't care about me. You know, whatever it is, we have these tracks that are running. So we have to interrupt those tracks because they are creating how we feel. And we can get really stuck in a rut with our partners and in our lives with these. So we want to watch those tracks. We want to, we want to set ourselves up for what we want to feel and remind ourselves about how we want to feel. And that's where auto responses come in, okay? We can't get out of the situation that you end up at odds with people in your life. That just happens. And you can extend, what I'm going to teach you today, you can extend to your entire life. Anywhere you go out in the world where things happen with other people, auto responses are very helpful. So we can't really control what happens, but we control what we manufacture. And so that's how you can use auto responses. These auto responses will reinforce things that you want to believe or things that you believe like in your heart, but you want to keep reinforcing. And I'll dig into that a little bit deeper in just a second. I have a class called Relationship Essentials where we dive in about how to use auto responses out loud in challenging situations. Like when you're in an argument and the other person, you know, they want to pull you into the past to things that have happened before, or they want to, they have different behaviors that have become patterns in your disagreements, and you can employ auto responses to keep yourselves in the present moment and keep yourself in healthy territory. We're not going to dig into that today. This is more for just what's going on internally with you, but those can be used in your challenging communications. So what is an auto response? An auto response is something that you say automatically right away when something happens. You just, it's like you don't even think about it. Why is it helpful? First of all, it is something that you don't have to think about, right? You don't have to, each time something happens, you don't have to ask yourself, what should I do now? You just automatically have a response. You just know right away what I'm going to do. I'm going to say this. I'm going to shift my energy, right? You don't have to keep reinventing the wheel. You don't have to think about it. The other thing is when you interrupt your experience, your emotional experience, and you interrupt that track fast, your mind doesn't have a chance to get like moving on things that are unhealthy. If you're familiar with Mel Robbins, who's awesome, she has something called the 5-second rule. Now she uses it for motivation, where when you have an urge to do something that's healthy for you or stop doing something, you just count down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and you move before your mind can interrupt and start to talk you out of or talk you into something that isn't healthy. It's the same idea with an auto response. You want to use it right away so that you don't end up going down that road where you start to manufacture your emotions. It's not going to benefit you or the people that you are in relationships with for you to let those tracks go, which are, those same old, whatever. He doesn't listen. He's selfish, whatever they are. You know what they are. We all have our tracks. He's lazy. We've got them about our kids, about our spouses, about our friends, our coworkers, anything. And what we do is we are putting someone in a box. And then they're stuck there. They don't even maybe know they're in the box, but we've put them in a box. And so how do they get to be who we want them to be if we've put them in a box already? We don't want to do that to our loved ones. So you want to shift your mind before it takes over. You want to shift away from that old track and into what you want to believe and what you want to reinforce for yourself. You don't want to have to energetically think about what you should do in a certain situation. So let me give you an example. I'm going to tell you a little story. I love this story. I heard it like years and years ago, but I think about it all the time. So there's this man, and he has a like small plot of land and one son, okay? And they have one horse, and this horse is super helpful for their little bit of land, to work this little bit of land. I mean, there's so much that they can do because they have this one horse. And then one day, this one horse takes off and runs away, okay? Now all the villagers come and they say to the man like, oh, this is terrible. We heard this terrible news that you lost your horse. What will you do now? It'll be so much harder for you to do everything. I mean, how will you get along? We feel so bad. And the man just goes, maybe so, maybe not. Okay? So the next day, what happens is his horse comes back and brings with it this pack of wild horses. And all of a sudden, not only does he have one horse, but he has all of these horses. So potentially this could be helping out this plot of land so much more and producing so much more for his family, and now to maybe sell. And the villagers come running and they say, oh my gosh, your good fortune. This is amazing. I can't believe it. This is so wonderful. How lucky you are. Now you can do so much. And he says, maybe so, maybe not. So then his son goes out, and his son goes out to break these wild horses. And as he's trying to break these wild horses so they're going to be able to work for the farm, the son falls and he has a terrible leg break. Breaks his leg really bad. And the villagers all come and they're like, oh, and they're bringing food and their condolences. And they're like, oh, I'm so sorry. I heard about your son. This is terrible. Who's going to help you? How are you going to get by? How will you do anything on this plot of land without your son's help? And this is just, this is awful. And the man says, maybe so, maybe not. And the next day, this army comes through, and they're recruiting every able-bodied young man to go out to what has been known in the land as one of the bloodiest, most deadly wars they've ever fought. But his son gets left behind because he has this broken leg, and he can't fight, right? And the villagers, they're distraught because they've lost all of their sons, and they come over and they're just like, you're so lucky. You still have your son. You still have your loved one here. You know, you're so fortunate. And what do you think the man says, right? What he has in that story is an auto response. He has trained himself to view situations in a way that he wants to feel, right? I don't know what his underlying belief is. I'm going to assume it's something like it all works out, right? And so when something comes, fortunate or misfortune, he's going to say maybe so, maybe not. Let's see what's going to happen. So that he does not have to ride the emotional roller coaster that the villagers had to ride. So that's what we are employing today. And let's see here. In your workbook, there are some cards. This is your job today, is you're going to pick out an auto response. Now, if you can come up with your own auto response, that's awesome. Invent your own. But I've got some ideas here for you. And I want you to know that in the workbook, there is an ink-friendly and an ink-not-friendly version. So if you're printing out, you could print out this one if you didn't want to use so much ink, and this one if you didn't mind and you wanted it to be more colorful. The cards are the same. Okay, so let's look at some of these and figure out like kind of what's behind them. The first one says, and I can't wait to see what happens next. This is my favorite one, and this is the one that I use the most often. When I'm having a experience and I'm thinking to myself, this sucks, I like to say, and I can't wait to see what happens next. Because I have a belief that everything is going to work out for me better than I could have ever imagined, better than I could have planned, better than I could have figured out. And so if I can just remind myself quickly, automatically, I can't wait to see why, right? I can't wait to see why this is happening. That moves me automatically into an emotional experience of where my belief of just trusting everything's going to be okay, right? And then I don't have to get stuck in this sucks. Next one, this too shall pass. Maybe you want to remind yourself that everything is temporary, right? Everything is temporary. Everything you're experiencing right now, it's going to end. That's just the nature of our life experiences. This one, now I know what to work on. I love that. That says, in life, I am being handed lessons all the time. And when it feels like it's a challenging, difficult thing, if I focus on, instead of this sucks, and more on, now I know what to work on, I can see that all of these red flags are just pointing me towards what to practice getting better at. Next one, I have survived everything else, okay? If you can look back at your life and you have done hard things and you have experienced hard things and you are here, you've survived them all. So whatever is thrown at you, I've survived everything else, could be your auto response. Plot twist. I love that one. Plot twist, right? That means, that reminds me that even though I think I'm running the show, I think I'm in control, I actually believe that there's a force bigger than me that has my interests at heart. And so when something gets shifted in my life away from what I really wanted to happen, I like to remember plot twist. Okay, we're going to have to go with this. We're going to have to be flexible and adjust, right? This is going to make a great story. That's one of my favorite ones too. When it just like, especially when you can kind of, what's awesome about this card, this is going to make a great story, this auto response, is when you're feeling like, man, this is awful. When you start thinking like that, you can almost imagine being down the road and telling the story and finding the humor in it. If you can find humor in life, you're going to be okay. That is like my number one indicator to myself that I'm going to be okay, is when I can find some humor in a situation. This is happening for me. Everything is happening for you. Everything in your life is happening for you. It might feel like it's crap, but when you look back at some point in time, you're going to see how that was happening for you. So if you can remember in the moment with an auto response very quickly, then you can shift your energy away from what hurts to how it's happening for you. And now I know what this feels like, right? If we're put on this earth, this is the belief that would be under that one. If we're put on this earth to experience all of the things that life has to offer, not just the good ones, then when we're going through something, we can think to ourselves, well, now I know what this feels like, right? Feeling our feelings helps us develop empathy. Empathy is like one of the most crucial things to creating intimacy. Remember the intimacy or the relationship step stool from yesterday? You have to be able to feel feelings in order to receive someone else's feelings and in order to share your own. So when you've got something like this, now I know what this feels like. You're strengthening your empathy muscle. All of these auto responses. Oh shoot. Sorry. I don't know what to do. That's what happens when you have a landline. Anyway, I totally lost you can see that it's like so easy for me to lose my train of thought. Anyway, now I know what this feels like. These are auto responses, okay? These are designed for you to use automatically. Just pick one. Pick out a card that is going to be the one that you focus on and that you use. The minute you feel a negative experience, a negative emotional reaction, within seconds, say this to yourself so that you automatically shift yourself into a different emotional response. And you'll have to pick the one that feels right for you, but you will notice that you might have a feeling initially, but when you can shift yourself away from something else, man, that unhooks you. It unsticks you. It's amazing. Shifts you energetically. So this is your homework today, is to pick one of these and start playing with this as you go through your life. I would love to hear what you chose. So if you want to drop that into the comments, that would be awesome. And please, let anybody that you know who might be interested in this course to come over, get the workbook, start watching the videos. I don't know how long I'm going to leave this all up for free. So I want to make sure that it's accessible to anybody who wants it right now. So make sure that you share it if you think of somebody. And thank you for being here live. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Lots of love, blessings for all of your relationships today. And I will see you tomorrow. Mwah.